to 1 Kings chapter 19. Have you ever played a game of hide and seek? Okay, I'm bringing some of you back. And you just knew there was someone hiding in a certain room. You just knew it. It's dark. It's a little too quiet. And you hate being scared. Am I bringing some of you back to hide and seek? Our teens love to play hide and seek in the dark throughout the church. And I think they love scaring each other as well. And so you're determined that one of the kids is in the room, and you're looking and you're going quiet. And what happens when you perceive that is the best place to jump out and hide? How do you usually handle walking into that room? Like closing your eyes is going to do anything. It's in the dark, but you're trying to open the door. You try to feel around. And then you get out as fast as you can. And then you feel pretty dumb because no one was in that room. But no one knows that because it's the dark, so. But you know. Man. And then, blah! Surprised more kids don't die of heart attacks playing hide and seek. Or youth leaders. And what we find is how we handle situations. I mean, it's a little goofy thing, but how we handle situations of playing hide and seek so often depends upon our perception of that situation. It was dark, definitely scary. Is that a shadow I see of a person? Maybe. I can't hear anything. And it affects how we react in that situation. Elijah, like we saw last week, had just finished one of the greatest showdowns in all of biblical history. He alone stood face to face with the king of Israel and 850 prophets of Baal and Asherah. And not only did he stand alone, but God used Elijah's prayers to bring down fire from heaven, and he single-handedly crippled the current religious system in that area. Pastors and servants of God live for these moments of God revealing himself in mighty, incredible ways and making himself known. These are cloud nine revival movements. These just fire people up. But what we see is not Elijah walking from this situation with his head held high and confident. Have that strut. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, we don't see that. But we see Elijah running for his life in fear and actually becomes so depressed that he desired to die. He went from cloud nine to wishing that he was 6 feet under. And today in 1 Kings chapter 19, we're going to see if we are not careful, our perceptions can hijack our beliefs. And as a result, will then hinder us from seeing the grace of God and living in the power of God. Our perceptions can hijack our beliefs. And then we will not be able to see the grace of God nor live in the power of God. See, our perceptions here this morning are what we see, hear, taste, smell, touch, what I believe subconsciously think in our current moment. It is our human reaction to now. Our beliefs are deep ingrained, our thought system, our value system, our worldview. How we've been raised, that guides the progression of our life. And when these two don't match, a lot of times we'll have what is called a crisis of faith, where what we keep perceiving does not match with what we have been told and what we believed and valued. And as a result, we have a crisis of faith. For example, a mouse shows up on the floor. You know what we perceive? That is a small, tiny rodent. I can squish it with my foot. I can kill this thing. I can use a broom and knock it across the floor. But what do? We squeal and jump, and suddenly we can leap giant 4-foot-high verticals in a single bound. Because something happened there where we forget our value system of, hey, the human race has put people on the moon. We fly in rockets and airplanes and cars. It's a mouse! Blah! Or Christ, boom, up on that table. Because what we perceived, I don't know what we perceive with a mouse, but it's big and scary and fast. But it makes no sense. But that's what happens. We have a crisis. We jump. Ah! Get a little serious, though. It's like if we've lived in a time where our nation has enjoyed years and years and years of peace and prosperity, we will have a mindset about the world. Things are generally okay. Things are good. Just keep trying. Things are relatively peaceful. We get this idea. But as soon as a war breaks out, what we're perceiving about the world no longer match with what we believe about the world. War isn't pretty. People can be this mean and terrible, and this is what we have, and our perceptions over time will alter and impact our beliefs. Talk to any number of vets that have come back, and we can talk any war, but any veteran that has been through combat, no matter what and how, and they are changed when they come back. Because what they perceived or what they valued going in and their beliefs, after seeing combat and war, it messes with you, and your perceptions will impact what you believe, and it changes you. And if we're not careful, how we perceive things will impact what we view about God. Well, it'll impact how we see his grace, and it'll impact living in the power of God. So let's see how this plays out with Elijah. So chapter 19, verse 1. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. And then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. Jezebel says, I plan on killing you just like you killed the prophets of Baal and Asherah. And says Elijah was afraid, and he rose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat under a broom tree, and he asked that he might die, saying, it is enough now, O Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. Within 5 verses, if you go like the verses just in the end of chapter 18, right into chapter 19, you have Elijah, cloud 9. We were asking in our community group, how in the world did he manage to kill 850 people? What were they doing? We came up with a couple theories, like they'd already been cutting themselves so much, maybe they're just like, done anyway. Maybe the crowd helped. We don't really know. But here he goes, Elijah, 1 verse 850, not very good odds, somehow is able to bring down fire from heaven, burns up altars, he goes crazy, and here is this woman. There is nothing worse for a man than the wrath of a woman. There's nothing worse for a husband than the wrath of a wife. I expected more amens out of that one. So, guys, have fun going home. What was that? Some of us know better? Good. I think all of us start off, though, not knowing better, all right? So, but here it is. Jezebel writes a letter or something, fires off an email to Elijah, and he checks his mailbox. Okay, this is the guy that just killed 850 guys, called down fire from heaven, and he gets his letter from this woman, and he's like, I'm out of here. I'm done. This is too scary. This is too much. And he runs in fear. He was afraid. What he was perceiving about this situation is it's done. It doesn't really make any sense, does it? I mean, if we really think about it, our beliefs and what he's already seen is that God is all-powerful. God can literally sling fireballs down from heaven like it's not even a big deal. He can do all of that. Elijah has just killed 850 guys, and yet he gets one message. And he is scared. See, our perceptions trap us. He began to fear for his life. And he runs for his life. And he runs and he's just given up. And he leaves this servant. And he just keeps going out into the field and he fully expects to die. And he asks and he begs and he's like, Lord, it is enough. I have failed. I am no better than my fathers. Let me die. He gave up. In the early 1900s, there was a theological view that the world, under the leading of Christianity, it was thought that the world was getting better. And over time, the world would, in essence, be ushered into and sort of begin the kingdom of God, and we would live it out, and then Jesus would return. But if you think about history, in the early 1900s, which two major events would have completely rocked and destroyed that viewpoint? World War I and World War II. Was the world becoming a better place? It was not. It was becoming a horrific place. And so what happened for many of these people is they believed that the world was getting better. They believed that it was good, and they'd studied the Bible, and somehow they came to that conclusion. And then suddenly they watched it play out. And the world is not getting better, it's getting worse. And we can kill ourselves faster now and quicker. And millions upon millions of people died. It forced them to sort of wrestle with this. And it concluded, and they had to change their viewpoint. And this view of postmillennialism changed, sort of went by the wayside. See, here Elijah, we know he is a prophet of God. He has already seen that God can literally materialize flour and oil in a jar. He has already risen someone who was dead. And he single-handedly takes down the religious system there. And he prays and asks God to bring fire down. And in the verses before, Elijah prays and rain comes down. He saw and knew that the God of Israel was God. He was the only God, and he was all-powerful. This is his core. This is his belief. And he believed that an all-powerful God, okay, and then he believed that God is working, and he believed that God is doing something, and I think maybe, so we're sort of speculating here, but something triggered in Elijah where he just had to run. I think that he figured with undeniable proof, such as fire coming down from heaven, that everyone should believe that Israel's God is the real one. And Jezebel's like, nope, don't care. His worldview got shook up a little bit. What he was perceiving was happening. Suddenly he's imagining what he believes. He's like, wait, if God is all powerful, when God does stuff, people should believe and change. And suddenly people aren't believing and changing. And this lady, she's out to get me. That means God, he just didn't know. So he runs. He gives up. He's scared. He flees. And what he's seeing is happening doesn't match with what he currently believed. And now he's scared and he has a crisis of faith and he runs. He runs away out into the wilderness to die. He got trapped. What he was perceiving didn't match, and it ultimately leads to despair and depression. And I will say that this isn't just like feel sorry for pastors, okay? I'm not saying that, but a lot of occupations, people go and they put on the confident, bold, everything's good front. But behind the scenes, and in the wilderness of the guys and ladies' minds, there is a time of depression and sorrow and despair, and people here in our church and in our families are struggling with these very issues that Elijah's having right now. What they are perceiving is not what they were told. And as a result, they're wrestling through this, and it brings people down to the bottom. Let's see what happens. It says, then he lay down in verse 5 and slept under the broom tree, and behold, an angel touched him and said to him, arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, and there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. And he ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel of the Lord came again a second time and touched him and said, arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. And he arose and ate and drank and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. And there, we'll stop right there for now, okay? I find how God responds to Elijah being one of the most incredible and encouraging things that I can read. Elijah is not trusting the Lord at this moment. He's not resting in the power of God. He's not resting in what God is doing. He's not trusting God. He gets up and he runs and flees. And he just gives up. There's no joy of the Lord. There's nothing. He's like, God, just take me. But God doesn't rebuke him. God sends his angel to minister to him twice. God was patient with him. I mean, whatever food God gave him was super food. 40 days. That's a weight loss plan right there. I don't know how to say it. And God let Elijah continue a 40-day journey while being in fear instead of punishing him. See, God's not, how dare you, get back. He let him continue while sustaining him and providing for him. And we never get the sense that God is angry with Elijah. We also never get the sense that Elijah is really appreciating this either. And I think this is sort of the second point. The first was our perceptions can trap us. The second one here is our perceptions can blind us, I think, to the grace of God. He's still struggling. He is still scared that he is going to die. He is still fleeing and running. I mean, he has no reason to keep on running. I mean, we've already talked about the fire and the food and the raising the kid up. We now have that Elijah seems to be in close proximity to an angel who cooks for him. Okay? Wow! Not only that, this food was superfood. It somehow sustained him for a 40-day journey in the wilderness. He literally could have eaten a bite of that bread, turned right back around, and walked probably right into the throne room and said, Jezebel, nah. And turn around and walk off. I got angels on my side. I got gods on my side. And not only that, do you guys remember the story of God bringing down the ravens and feeding Elijah? Do you guys, what is it, the movie, Alfred Hitchcock movie of birds or whatever it was called? The birds, you guys know what I'm talking about? Come on, this is your, okay? All right, God could have just brought a whole flock of ravens into the home of Jezebel and been done. God was in complete control the whole time. But he was so scared of what he was perceiving was going to happen to him and everything that was going on, he just gave up and he couldn't even see or appreciate what God had been doing for him the whole time. And sometimes I think our perceptions blind us to the grace of God. We look at situations and we see no hope. We see that our family is sick. But we miss the fact that we have been blessed by years and years and years of great connection with that family member. You were struggling with money possibly, but you still have a warm place to stay and are probably, in all honesty, heavier than most people in the world. So we've gotten fed somehow. Your children are being living nightmares at home. But they are healthy. And you'd rather have a healthy child with some behavior issues instead of a sick child struggling to stay alive. Our perceptions hijack and prevent us from seeing how God has been good to us. Elijah couldn't see it. So let's see what happens. In verse 9. It says, there he came to a cave and lodged in it. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel has forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even I only am left. We talked about that last week. That's not entirely true. And he said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold. Oh, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay, we're right there. Okay. So he asked, what are you doing here, Elijah? I like Elijah. It's just a very honest answer. Once again, we get no sound that God is angry with him or God is rebuking him, but like, what are you doing? And Elijah says, I feel like I'm working my tail off. That's what very zealous means. I've been working my tail off. I have been trying. I have been zealous. I have been faithful. I've tried this. I mean, I feel like I'm the only one who is still doing what you want to do. I feel alone. And in some ways, I feel abandoned. I do all this stuff, and people are still out to get me. I do all this stuff, and people are still trying to kill me. And so God says, oh, hey, I want you to go stand out there. So he goes out there. And behold, the Lord passed by. And a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces rocks before the Lord. That's like, you know when a car flies by and you feel the wind? Whoosh. I think that's sort of what happened. God goes, whoosh. Next thing you know, the mountain is coming off. The wind picks up, it's being dropped. Rocks are falling all over the place. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake happens. And the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. Could you imagine how terrifying that would be? I mean, strong wind, boulders are dropping down. Then the ground starts shaking and you're inside a cave. Hint, hint, don't be inside a cave when an earthquake happens. Okay? But do you go out into the wind or do you stay in the earthquake to crumble and die? Oh, and then there's a fire. Now what? What does he do? It's almost like, yeah, you're scared of Jezebel, but watch this. Now the fire. The fire sounded a low whisper. It's like it's quiet. I mean, I could imagine just the fire, earthquake, wind. And he hears a low whisper. What are you doing here, Elijah? And Elijah says, I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. Look, no matter how hard I'm trying here, they still won't believe. God, no matter how hard, they're still not believing. I don't understand. And I feel like even I only am left and they seek my life to take it away. Elijah's like, it doesn't make sense, God. It doesn't make sense. I'm trying so hard and trying to do this. And you've told me to do it and stuff is supposed to be happening, God. You see what the Lord responds? And the Lord said to him, go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. I got a job for you. Oh, God, I think you're missing the point. I'm alone. I'm by myself. So how is this encouraging? Because we hear nothing else from Elijah trying to, reason this out. And like I said, these are very very done stories. But I think this shows us that Elijah's perception also blinded him and also prevented him from living in the power of God. God, just by passing by, created a windstorm, an earthquake, a firestorm. God just did all of that. And you know who was still alive in the midst of that? Elijah. And I think in some ways God directly spoke, your perceptions have blinded you to the power of God here. Look at this. Wind, earthquake, fire, and you're still alive. And if I can do this and you manage to stay alive, you think Jezebel's a worry? God spoke directly to him. The perceptions had blinded him to the power of God, and God spoke directly to his perceptions. You're scared of her? They're all scared of me. And you're right where I want you, Elijah. I have work for you. Let's go back. And he sends them. And Elijah goes back. And I'm going to show us an image. So what happens with our perceptions, okay, is it can really feel like, because we're humans and we're finite, we don't have all the information and we're not all powerful. When life happens to us, it literally feels like, like in a wave pool at a water park. And we feel like, man, I don't have control. If I can't even control the ground I'm standing on, what's going on? And this is how life hits us. When life, it seems to, when it rains, it pours. You guys have heard that phrase? The idea is when something bad, it feels like everything is just pouring on us. And when we start perceiving as God's not here, he doesn't care, we don't see it, because we become so focused on what's happening just in our immediate vicinity that we stop seeing and remembering that God has been with us this whole time. And we lose track of that. So this image I'm going to share with you is, does this seem like it's moving? There's not a number. Just start moving your eyes around it. It's harder with the big screen. Does it feel like it's just moving a little bit? If you guys look at it. I can see it. It makes me sick. Do you guys see it? Start looking up and down the page. You guys see it? Come on. It's an optical illusion here. You guys are not even getting... Do you guys see it or not? You don't see it? Can you see the screen? Look at that screen there. See, there's another screen there. See which one's better. So what happens with this optical illusion here, so how do you guys not see? I think you guys are all blind. But hey, what happens is the way these screens are set up, because you guys see there's white there and black up here, it's not moving. But when you look at these, if you guys are blinking a lot, it actually feels like it's doing it too. Okay, I just have better eyes than you guys. But anyways, optical illusions, how they play out. Maybe you guys just didn't do these as a kid, but when it looks as life, it literally looks like everything around us doesn't quite. We're perceiving that this image is moving. Often you guys have seen the image where it looks like it's an old woman, but it's actually a young woman. Or maybe if you guys have seen it looks like a young woman, but it's an old woman. You guys seen those? I'm trying to think of any other optical illusions. Or the vases, the two vases, and it looks like two heads, but it looks like two vases. Or one vase and two heads. You guys have seen those? Come on, man, you guys are nuts. Wow. Okay. When we look at those, we're perceiving something, right? Like we look at it, we're like, it's an old woman. But actually, it's a young woman. We look at it, it's a young woman. We're like, no, it's an old woman. And you look at this, and you guys got to come up here. If you guys can't see, come up here after. But as you guys blink and look, it literally looks like everything around it is moving. And it's shaking, and it feels like I'm going to get seasick on a boat again. I was afraid some of you guys would vomit, but none of you can see it, so it's okay. And that's what happens. Now, the belief and the true facts of this is those dots aren't moving at all. It's a plain picture. They are just there. Nothing's happening. But when it comes to life, we start looking at these objects, and it literally looks like things are moving and bending and waving and twisting. And that's what happens. Our perceptions blinds us to the fact that this is just an image with a bunch of dots. That's it. It's just a bunch of polka dots on a piece of paper. And in life, when we go through and walk in life, our perceptions make it look like things are falling apart around us. And it traps us. And our perceptions blind us to the grace of God. And our perceptions prevent us and hinder us from living in the power of God. Elijah was scared of Jezebel, and he had no reason to be scared of her. And God spoke to him and said, hey, you're safe. Get back to work. And so when life begins to shake us up, and when we start to worry, and when we start to fear, and we're perceiving in life that things are falling out of control, and I encourage you to slow down and focus and remember the grace of God that has been in your life and the power of God that has been sustaining you. And don't let your perceptions trap you.